Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. We've done some arm guards in the past, but how about we step it up? Let's go with a pair of hinged arm guards. This is a great project, not terribly difficult, but very comfortable, and these look good. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com, or check below. We've got links going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So let's take a look at our pattern. As usual, we've got a digital pic of our pattern. We'll look at that shortly, but we're going to talk about what we're doing first off. That'll help everything fall into place. So we're going to make a pair. I'm going to need to cut one up, one down, one up, one down. This larger panel, that's going to go across the top of our arm. The smaller bottom panel, that will go underneath. So out here, we've got our lace holes. Those are going to match up when this comes around. But right here, we've got rivet holes. We're going to make a small leather strap or billet. Now I'm going to give that a 1-inch spread between the holes, not the edge, but the holes, so that we have just a little room there so these will move easily. Now, for our radius, this is a downloadable pattern, free, absolutely. But if you want to make your own, this is a 32-inch radius, and that's a 23.5-inch radius. We're just going to give that a little bit of a curve. That's a nice touch. All right, over to our digital pic. So on our smaller panel, 5 across the top, 3 across the bottom, 8.5-inch tall. We've got our lace holes and our rivet holes. And on the right side, 6 3/4 wide, 4.5 at the bottom, and 8.5 tall there. We've got our lace and our billets. So down on this little billet here, we're going to give this a 1-inch spread. And I'm going to give that 3/8 of an inch on either side. So therefore, we're at 1 3/4 of an inch, 5/8 inch wide. Right here, we're going to have to cut 4 of those. Okay, so easy enough. Let's step over to our main table, cut some leather. We're going to add a stamp design to our arm guards. These are going to look good. But the reason I bring that up is because if we're going to go to the trouble to stamp or carve a project, let's go with a quality tannage. This is going to make our project look better without any increase in our skill level. So this is our Herman Oak natural strap 8 to 9 ounce. The 8 to 9 ounce, that's going to give us some good body and good durability for our arm guards. And this is going to give us a beautiful stamp design. Now for us crafters, a side of Herman Oak, relatively expensive. We don't have to go that route. We've got this in panels, 12 by 24. And we can easily get 1 pair of arm guards out of this and still have some leather to work with. So if we're going all in on a project, let's go with the right leather. Now, one more point. I typically will go with my pattern sheeting for my patterns. But in this situation, this is my lucky pattern. I've made a lot of arm guards from this, so let's just stick with this. Now, we're going to go with a pen. Well, that's not the best route to go. We could go with a scriber and all, but if we use a pen, I can see it and the camera can see it. But also, we're going to cut inside our line. That's going to give us a more accurate size, but also we're going to edge and we're going to work on our edges. So unless we have a big mistake, not going to be an issue. So let's line these up and trace these out. And let's don't forget to flop our patterns for our second set. And there we go. Okay. Now, new blade, sharp blade every time. Let's cut our pieces out. Good cuts. Okay, next step, let's go with one of our corner knives. This is the 25mm. We're going to corner all 4 corners on each piece. Now, it's a nice touch, but yeah, here we go. Where our 2 pieces come together, if we've got straight points on there, that's going to dig into our arm. We don't want that. So let's just do a round corner, all 4 corners, all 4 pieces. Very nice touch. Okay, we're going to reset here. Let's get our leather wet. We've got a good video on casing leather, so I'm not going to go into great detail here. But what this is going to do, first off, it's going to give us consistent moisture. If we're very wet on this end, very dry on this end, our stamp down here is going to be mushy. On this end, not much of a stamp at all. But the second thing it's going to do, it's going to soften up the fibers within the leather. Allow that to take a good stamp. Now our steps here, we're going to get our leather wet. We're going to lay it out for a minute. Let some of that excess moisture evaporate. We'll put that in a baggie, leave it for anywhere from 6 hours to maybe 5 or 6 days. We'll pull it out, let it dry to a point where it's starting to look like its original color. That's when our leather is ready to stamp. Now, I don't necessarily want to get too much moisture in this. It's not an issue. It just means we're going to let this sit out a little bit longer. So went into a count of about 3 or 4 seconds. Let's do one more pass. Okay, let's lay this out. Same thing for these 3 pieces. And there we are. Okay, I'm going to let these sit right where they are for maybe about an hour. Let some of this excess moisture evaporate off. Then we'll put these in our baggie. We've given these ample time, just a little bit more than an hour, and I can feel them. I can feel the moisture, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot of moisture in these. It's not dripping off. Okay, next step, let's put these in a baggie. And there we go. Okay, let's give those overnight. But between here and there, let's step over, knock out our billets. I'd like to go with something a little heavier than a 4 to 5 for our billets. For our hinges, 4 to 5 common in my shop. 5, 6, 6, 7, not so much. Which brings us to this. This is a belly. It's a great buy for us crafters. We can keep uncommon weights in our shop without having a lot of money on the shelf. And we've got this in multiple weights. So right here, I've got a scrap. And I'm going to set my wood strap cutter, 5/8 of an inch. So let's strap this out. Good, we've got that. Now, before we cut this down, let's go ahead and edge and groove. So let's groove both sides. Now, on my groover, I've got this set at about 1/8 of an inch. Good, we've got that. Okay, now let's go with an edger. This is a number 1 Master Tool edger. And there we go, that's going to add a nice touch to our hinges. Now on this, we need 4 at 1 3/4. Okay, we've got that. Let's step over to our punch table. Let's start here by marking our billets, and I've got a little pattern here. So 1 3/4 long, 3/8 of an inch in. Let's mark and punch. Good, we've got those marked. Now, this is a great revolving punch for us crafters. Not terribly expensive, but it's a good solid tool. We've got replaceable tubes on that. That's a nice touch. So these are going to be rivet holes. I'm going to go with maybe the 2nd, 3rd hole up from the bottom. Okay, we've got those punched. Now, 5/8 inch strap. We're going to go with our Master Tool round end 5/8. Uncommon size. I cut a lot of 5/8 inch strap. 3/4 will work, 1 will work. We can even go with our corner knife, 15 millimeter, that will work. But we've got the tool, let's use it. Okay, we've got those. Let's go check on our cased leather. We don't have to case our leather. We can wet it with a sponge, give it about 10, maybe 15 minutes, let that water wick in, and we can stamp or carve. But if we case our leather, it is a world of difference in the outcome. So I can feel these, very heavy, got a lot of moisture content. Let's lay these out. Very nice, consistent moisture, that's what we're looking for. Still a little too wet to stamp or carve. So let's give these about 90 minutes. Now, I'm not necessarily going to watch the clock. I'm more going to watch our leather because I want this to start to return to its original color. We've given our pieces about 2 hours dry time, starting to return to the original color, but I can still feel some moisture in these. These are ready to stamp. Let's go put in our stamp design. For our stamp design, we're going to go with a standalone and then a braid, top and bottom. These should look nice. Now the big point with this design, we're going to go with 4 tools. We don't have to. We can use 1, 2, 3, or 4 tools. Bigger point here, pick up whatever you've got, make it your own. This is the place to make this pair of arm guards our own. So here's the design we're going to go with. We've got 4 tools here. We'll look at each of these as we move along. But right here, we've got a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch box. So I've made a template. 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch box, and then I've given those 1/2 inch spread. So let's start with our arm guard. There we go. Okay, let's just scribe in these boxes. Okay, good. Now on my template, I've centered this top to bottom and left to right. All right, so our first stamp, we're going to go with our hourglass stamp. And we're going to make 4 boxes with the flat edge. Okay, thus far, very cool, and we could absolutely go in all directions with this. So next up, let's go with a wishbone. This is a border stamp, and I love this. We've got a little flourish in the middle, but also the line on this somewhat matches the line in this tool. So let's line these up on each point. And one more. We could absolutely leave that right where it is. Looks good. We could add a spot in here. Stamps, all kinds of stamps would work around this. But let's do this. Let's go to one of my favorite tools. This is a small sunburst. Let's drop this right in the middle of our box. Okay, that looks good, and this leather, this Herman oak, is just a pleasure to work with. But notice we've cased it, that beautiful impression. Okay, let's go with just one more. How about just a simple cedar? We've got an empty spot right there. Let's drop a cedar in. And there we are. Very cool design. Okay, one more. Let's take our wing divider and we're going to scribe a line about 1/2 inch in on both sides. And this to me is very reminiscent of metal armor. I've seen brass braids on the metal armor, okay? Now, we've got a braid tool here. We've got a smaller and a larger. We can really cover some distance with this, but with this, we can make pretty tight turns, actually. So let's drop this in, and I'm gonna drop this, come in about 1/2 inch, but I'm gonna line up the V and the point on that tool right on our scribed line. Okay, let's line this up. But again, we can curve this around. Very easy to do. But let's just stay on our line. And let's do one more. Okay, good. Let's do the same on this end. Back, let's take all 4 sides out just a little bit further. Yeah, there we go. Get us just a little closer to that edge. Okay, well, if that looks good, I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, those look nice. Very good. Okay, so we've got our 2 top panels done. On our 2 lower lames, back panels, I'm just going to add the braid to each end. And there we go. Those look very good. Nice. Okay, so at the very least, we need to give these about 12 hours dry time. I would say 24. So let's let these dry, then we'll keep moving with our arm guards. Ample dry time on our pieces. Let's edge, punch some holes. We're ready to dye these. So let's start with a groover. Now I'm going to set mine at 1/8 inch. Let's go all the way around all 4 pieces. Okay, we've got that into me. That looks so much better than an unfinished edge. Okay, over to a number 2 master tool edger. I'm going to go all the way around both the top grain and the flesh side. And the flesh side will never edge as easily as our top grain, but that's okay. That gives us some nice edges. All right, our next step, let's mark. Make sure we've got our correct pieces here. Good. Let's mark for our rivet holes and our lace holes. And we've got that. Okay, so for our rivet holes, let's go down to a tube, about the 2nd, 3rd, maybe even the 4th hole. Let's punch all 4 here. Good, we've got those. Now let's go all the way up to our largest tube. And one of the things I love about this revolving punch, we can replace the tubes as they wear. In fact, I've replaced my largest. So now let's go with our lace holes. And we've got that. Okay, let's reset here. Let's dye our arm guards. I don't typically like to go with black for our projects, hard to see, but in this situation, first off, we're going to add an antique. Secondly, not much assembly required once these are dyed. And black, the timeless classic, cures all ills. Now, as we have dye in our shop and it sits for a while, it can get a little bit thick. Let's just go with a dye reducer. That makes all the difference in the world. So, right here, I've just got a hook made from cheap wire from any hardware store. let's dip our 4 pieces and our 4 billets. Let that drain off a little bit. Good, we've got that. Now, we're going to do 2 things before this dries out. I'm going to take my slicker. Let's hit our edges. Now, pressure, not the point here, but let's just round our edges best we can. Good. Now, we're not going for a full-blown rounded slicked edge here, but if we're going to wear these without, say, a doublet or a gambeson, that's not going to feel bad against our skin. Okay, now, while these are still wet, we can do this a couple of different ways. I've got 2 tubes here. This is the wrapping paper that our leather comes in, and I've just measured these out. It's about 3, maybe 3.5 inches, and up here, about 4.5 inches. We don't want these super form-fitting. That would be uncomfortable. But with these, we've just got tubes. So let's slide these in. I'm going to round them. Good. Okay. And let's slide that down in. And the same on this side. And there we go. Easy way to do that. Okay. Let's give those 2, maybe 2.5 hours dry time. We've had plenty of dry time here. Very nice. We've got a good form on these. So let's start. First off, we're just going to buff. Top grain, edges, flesh side. Just going to go with a cotton rag. Now, this is helpful. I've got a piece of railroad track. I've been using this forever. Yeah, it kind of looks like it. I've set a few rivets on this. We don't have to have this. Something like a 2x4 will work. So let's just buff. Let's hit our edges. And our flesh. Good. And there we go. Okay, we're going to add an antique. Now, we don't have to take this step, but to me, nothing looks worse than antique wrapping around to the flesh side. So let's just use some painter's tape. And we don't have to tape the entire inside, but let's just do our best to tape the edges. And that takes a little extra time, but we will enjoy the outcome from that for years to come. Now on the inside, we edged that inside. So getting right to the edge, well, it's a bit of a gray area. But the bigger point is, whether we're right on it or a little over it, we still have a very good, clean, straight line, and we're protecting the arm guard from additional antique. Okay, let's set up for that. For so long in Leathercraft, we had 5 antique colors, 3 browns, a black, and a burgundy. But this, in my opinion, one of the coolest additions to Leathercraft. It's a neutral antique. So we can mix this with any one of our Angelus paint colors. All kinds of cool possibilities. Purples, reds. We're going to go with gold on black. Now, typically we would think black, that's going to knock out any design, any stamp design. Absolutely not. Once we hit this with a top coat, that design is going to pop. But since we're going to drop in a gold antique, we're going to add to that. Now, right here, this larger stamp, the hourglass stamp, that's probably not going to take a lot of antique, a lot of wide open areas. But our 2 stamps here and our braid, definitely going to take some antique. Now, to measure this out, I cannot tell you a good way to measure this because we've got 2 different liquids here. But what I'd like to do is just drop out some gold. Now, let's slowly mix our antique into our gold, and we almost can't go wrong here. The more paint we have in our mix, the more color we're going to add, the less vice versa. But let's just mix some of this in. I think we've got a good mix there. And I should be doing this with gloves on. I'm going to do that because this is a mess. In fact, it's the last stop in my shop for both rags and gloves. But it looks like we've got a pretty good mix here. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean up my work surface here. There we go. Okay, so we're going to add this with a rag, just a cotton rag. Then we're going to come back and buff it again with a cotton rag. I don't want something as thick as, say, like a felt, because that's going to take that antique right back out. But let's start by covering the full top grain, because when we add this, that's not going to change color. We'll then come back and start adding into our stamp designs. Let's make sure we get that down in our groove line. That's a nice touch. And let's come back and rub that off. Now, that's not going to give us a lot of color on the main body, but it's going to give it a little bit of a patina. Now, if we didn't get our antique down into our groove lines, that's okay, because now let's come back with a dauber and let's start adding our antique, and also let's hit our edges. And let's work this down into our stamp design. Good. Now let's come back over that. Now, don't want to rub too hard. I don't want to pull that antique back out, but let's just go over that lightly. Yeah, there we go. Starting to stand out. Good. I'm going to hit the other braid and my edges. And there we are again. Not a lot of color right there, but simply a patina. Oh, that looks good. Particularly if we're going to have that out in the sunlight, that's going to pop. We'll hit that with a good top coat here shortly, but now I'm going to do the other three pieces same way. And we can hit any spots we missed, which is a couple of good points. Once this dries, again, our top grain's not going to change color. We can come back and add if we want to. But also those groove lines, hard to get that antique to stick down in there. But if we can do it, that is a very nice touch. All right, we've got those. I'm going to give those about 45 minutes dry time. But let's don't forget, I almost did, our little billets. Now we should tape these, but I'm not going to. Let's just go ahead and add some antique. Good, our billets are done. Okay, let's give this about 45 minutes dry time. We'll come back in with our top coat. Lots of dry time here, but we're getting close. Our antique's dry. So let's take our tape off. Okay, we're ready to add our top coat. Now, I say this every time. We're going to go with our leather balm. It's my favorite. Now, I work for Weaver. I should spread out with top coats, but I know what this is going to do. It's going to give us a low gloss, easy to apply, easy to buff. We don't need ventilation, and it's going to give us a lower gloss, something I like. Now I'm going to apply this with two different rags. First off, I'm going to go with something thicker. Old hoodies and sweats make a great material for applying our leather balm because it's going to hold a lot in there. We can do a much larger piece. Then we'll come back with a soft cotton rag to buff. So let's get some leather balm in our rag. And now, very slowly, let's just work our way across our project. And back across. Now, the one thing we want to avoid is bubbles and streaks. But if we go slow, not an issue. Okay, going to do the same for the other three pieces. Okay, we've got those 4 pieces. Now don't forget our little billets here. Okay, we've got those. Now let's come back to the first piece. Let's take a cotton rag and let's just buff this. Oh, those look good. Very nice. Now don't forget our edges. Let's hit these one more time. Rub off the excess. And let's hit this with our burnisher one more time. Yeah, there we go. We've got a nice edge on that. Very nice. Good, the billets are done. These look nice. Let's go knock these together. Now, I feel like I'm seeing a little more beige than gold. Well, first off, we're under my shop lights. I'd like to see this outside under the sunlight. But secondly, any color that lays in over black is going to struggle to be seen. So again, I want to see these out in the sunlight. Now, when we're adding our billets, this is as easy as it can be. We're not going to get confused here. Well, there's our rivet holes. They match up nicely. But if we get the wrong piece, well, the only way we can do that is upside down. So again, we're not going to get confused there. Now let's go with our medium double cap rivets, technically the 5/16 inch. Let's bring our marble right over to the edge. Good, let's come through, add a billet and a cap. One of the things I love about the double caps, that cap snaps down on that. So we can add a bunch of rivets without actually setting them. That's a big help. So we've got our setter. This is from our 4-piece deluxe set. Good. Same on this end. Okay, we've got that. Let's flip that around. Make sure we got the right one. We do. And there we go. Very nice. Oh, I like those. Those are going to fit well and feel good. Same thing to the other side. And that side looks good too. Very cool. Let's add some lace and we're done here. I tend to cut my own lace. This is our Pioneer leather. Makes a good lace. It's a 5 to 6 ounce, multiple colors. But we also sell a chrome tan lace. Actually, by the piece, 54 inches. 2 of those would work nicely. Now on this, I want a piece 48 inches long. Down here, I'm going to cut tapers on the end of that. Now, rule of thumb, with arm guards, frogs, we want to lace away from the hand or the sword or the dagger. So let's start at the bottom. Now, one thing with this is going to be a little stiff to begin with. But as we use these, what's going to happen? We'll tie a knot on the end of each of these. We can open it up, put it on, and literally just pull that lace and it will close. That comes with just a little time. So let's even this out. Good. Okay, I'm going to cross over. And cross over. And cross over. There we go. Same on the other side. There we go. Okay, same on this side. All right, let's try these on. Now, we do technically have a left and a right. What I would like, design up, obviously, but I'd like my hinges out and my lace in. So this is going to be for my left hand. Let's open this up, see how these fit. And there we go. Actually, that's a perfect fit. These look good, they feel good. I'm happy with this outcome. Great pair of arm guards. In so many places, we can make these our own. I'm dying to see this with a red, blue, yellow, green antique, but also the stamp design, the color dye. You know what, in Leathercraft, a lack of options, not our problem. But I hope you have a great time with your arm guards, and I hope they're beautiful. Good luck with your project.